Russia, a formidable nation in size and power, has its own source of fear, which comes in the form of a coalition of nations. This coalition is known as NATO and is designed to counteract any potential advances by Russia. The expansion of NATO towards the east, with Albania and Croatia joining the coalition, has been a major concern for Russia. This move threatens Russia's security, causing them to demand that NATO halt its expansion. However, NATO's growth continues, with Finland and Sweden expressing their intent to join the coalition. As a result, Russia's land border with NATO has doubled in length, and they can no longer ignore NATO's strength. This year, Russia even went to war with Ukraine due to its decision to apply for NATO membership. Thus, it is crucial to delve into what NATO is and why it is feared by Russia. This video will provide a comprehensive analysis, but as war-related topics are not always favored by the YouTube algorithm, your likes would be greatly appreciated. So let's delve into the history and purpose of NATO to understand why Putin is so apprehensive about this alliance. Following the finish of World War II, which spread over from 1939 to 1945, the Soviet Association declined to pull out its powers from Eastern Europe. It is possible that the Soviet Union's decision to encircle Berlin in 1948 and establish NATO in 1949 was motivated by a desire to acquire additional resources or a response to the significant losses incurred during the war. The North Atlantic Settlement Association was established to counter the Soviet Association's expansionist approaches and was at first made out of 12 part countries, including the US, Incredible England, France, Canada, Italy, the Netherlands, Iceland, Belgium, Luxembourg, Norway, Portugal, and Denmark. By and by, NATO flaunts 30-part nations and is more strong than at any time in recent memory, making it Moscow's most dreaded fear. In 2020, North Macedonia became the latest addition to the member states of NATO. Moreover, there are 3 nations, specifically Ukraine, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Georgia, which have communicated their yearnings to join the collusion as accomplice nations. Such inclusion of new members would further bolster the resources and capabilities of NATO. However, it is worth noting that this intention has contributed to dissatisfaction with NATO. To elaborate on this, I will discuss it shortly. In its essence, NATO serves as a military alliance that aims to establish a collective security policy for all its member states. This implies that any assault on one NATO part state will be viewed as an assault on all part states. Consequently, all NATO countries will retaliate against the aggressor. This principle is comparable to the notion of how siblings defend each other on the playground. NATO, its goal is to guarantee the opportunity and security of its individuals through strategic and military means. This statement holds a significant place in the NATO pact, causing considerable fear among the Russians. The reason behind this fear stems from the addition of 15 new countries to the global community. These countries incorporate Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan, which arose after the disintegration of the Soviet Association over 20 years prior. Regardless of this breakdown, Russia kept on chasing after approaches to hold these dissident states under tight restraints, which at last blew up when these nations joined NATO, especially Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania in 2004. This move further isolated Russia and sparked Putin's concern. The NATO alliance, formed to prevent Soviet expansion, has grown steadily since its inception, encompassing Central and Eastern European states. This has caused significant unease in Moscow for the past 3 decades, as it has stripped Russia of its dominance in the region. Following the reunification of Germany, all the past Warsaw Agreement nations have become individuals from NATO, including Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, which were once important for the Soviet Association. As a result, the Soviet Union's once extensive sphere of influence has diminished significantly, and it now only wields domestic influence in Russia, its successor state. The change is obvious when we look at the guide of the Soviet Association's previous area of impact to the ongoing one, which is presently only a small part of its previous size. It's understandable that those seeking to revive the Soviet Union's glory days would find this hard to accept. Russia's primary issue is the eastward expansion of NATO, which limits its influence and power. Putin has expressed his disapproval of NATO's expansion, citing in December 2021, "America is at our doorstep with missiles. How would America feel if missiles are deployed at Canada or Mexico's borders?" The continued expansion of NATO towards Russia's doorstep is something that Russia resents, and it's one of the main reasons why Russia invaded Ukraine. Initially, when Ukraine expressed interest in joining NATO, Russia recognized that such a move would completely encircle them, which is something they find unacceptable. Given that Ukraine is the second largest former Soviet state, it holds significant influence, resources, and manpower. Russia believes that having a NATO member right at their doorstep is unacceptable and goes against their beliefs. Their stance is so deeply ingrained that they have even gone to war with Ukraine to prevent them from becoming a NATO member. As a result of Russia's stance, they have developed strained relationships with Europe, especially NATO, resulting in tense confrontations. Under these circumstances, let's explore Russia's demands of NATO. It's no secret that Putin isn't exactly known for making his neighbors feel at ease. As response to recent events, Putin has made his demands and voiced his grievances. One of Russia's key requests is for NATO to stop its venture into Eastern Europe, a move that has Russia feeling compromised. Putin is likewise pushing for an assurance that Ukraine won't turn into a NATO part, a point that he is immovable on. But that's not where Putin's demands end. He's also calling for NATO to revert back to its pre-1997 status and stop deploying weapons in Russia's vicinity. Essentially, Putin is pushing for a smaller, weaker NATO that resembles the organization prior to 1997. Putin's argument is supported by the fact that Russia has contested the membership of 14 nations that were previously part of the Warsaw Pact, which was created as a response to the formation of NATO in 1955. While the agreement was planned to give military insurance to its individuals, it quit existing following the breakdown of the Soviet Association. NATO and the US rejected Russia's excessive demands. Putin wants to reset and withdraw all NATO soldiers. According to Jeffrey Van Orden of the Gold Institute for International Strategy, Moscow controls these nations. What's Putin's goal? He's testing the West's resolve. Putin wants credit for his successes in Donbass and Crimea, total control of the Sea of Azov shoreline, domination over the Black Sea, and the recovery of Ukraine, another former Soviet bloc nation under Moscow's rule. Putin's motivations are clear, but they raise a what if. What if Russia invades a NATO neighbor? What if Russia must face NATO? Can they succeed? I'll give you a definition, no, to keep this portion quick. Russia would lose against NATO. Therefore, they'd rather fight Ukraine before it enters. But that's not working out well. Russia's incapacity to compete with NATO's 30 members deserves its own film. Russia's military capability and defense spending are no match for the world's strongest military alliance. NATO said that member nations spent $1.2 trillion on the military in 2021, compared to Russia's $61.7 billion in 2020. Russia cannot match NATO's spending due to this huge gap. NATO has about 3.3 million well-trained and equipped soldiers, including 40,000 ready to face Russian forces. Russia's 1.2 million militaries may not be equipped to fight NATO forces. Russia's status as a powerful nation has been tarnished by the Ukrainian war. Russia's aggressive measures, which may be based on fear, have only made problems worse since their disputes with NATO have strengthened the alliance. We see the absurdity of Germany obstructing the Nord Stream 2 project, which would sell more Russian natural gas to Europe. Putin's harsh actions paradoxically unite his opponents. The Ukraine-NATO confrontation is complicated. NATO doesn't want Ukraine to join, but it won't let Putin block applications. Russia must not set NATO's defenses or member nations' limitations. Putin believes that the West abandoned Moscow by expanding NATO eastward, breaking Cold War agreements. NATO disputes such promises. I can't tell who's lying, but these global peace similarities are interesting. Russia is worried about NATO's progress and its ramifications. NATO will never enable Putin to revive the Soviet Union. This ambition fades as more Russian regions and allies join NATO. Thus, Russia is preemptively attacking countries before they join NATO, knowing its influence will be greatly reduced. The conflict between Russia and NATO has significant geopolitical consequences. It has caused widespread alarm and unease, particularly in Eastern Europe. The position is precarious, and any mistake might exacerbate the conflict and have far-reaching implications. It is critical to remember that this crisis is fundamentally about Russia's desire to regain its influence in Eastern Europe, not Ukraine. Putin seeks to re-establish Russia's dominance while challenging the West's hegemony. The West, on the other hand, is unwilling to abandon the gains won in Eastern Europe since the fall of the Iron Curtain. The Russia-NATO conflict is complicated and varied. It has historical, political, and strategic roots, and will not be easily resolved. However, both sides must engage in dialogue and seek peaceful resolutions to the conflict. The future of Eastern Europe and global stability depend on it.